Walaikum salam.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, with God's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. We bear witness that there is no God worthy of our worship besides Allah, the one and only, and bear witness that Muhammad, to whom the Quran was revealed, is his last servant and his messenger to all of humanity. We'd like to welcome you to our third segment of Al-Islam Refocused, the Guiding Light. We're very happy this afternoon to have on this panel Imam Abdul Hafiz Wahid from Durham, and Imam Dr. Salahuddin Muhammad, and myself, Oliver Muhammad, of Al-Salam Islamic Center of Raleigh. We are here today to share with you what Islam has to say about the current world events. And as we look around the world, we see so much trouble in the world and so much disturbance. And we want to share with you what Islam has to say and some of the solutions that Islam offers humanity in this time of trouble. And just to support with the text what they've been saying on this issue of the sanctity of life. Life, Allah, the Creator, He created life, and He gave life sanctity. That every human being's life is sacred.
That's right.
And there's a verse in the Quran in chapter 5, verse 32, where it says, "If anyone slays a human being, unless it be for murder or spreading damage on the earth or creating mischief, it shall be as though he has slain all of mankind. And if anyone saves a life, it shall be as though he has saved the life of all mankind." So ISIS are putting these pictures up on YouTube and online with this savage holding this knife, have a human being who is completely innocent, not even a soldier, but a news reporter.
Right.
I mean, this person, so all of humanity should be enraged,
Right.
because this person, if he slayed one of those persons, it's like he's killed all of us. Right. So that's why we are here today to condemn this barbaric group who don't give the true picture of what Islam is about. We are here to condemn their behavior, and we're not afraid
No.
to speak our mind.
No.
And I know I've always felt that we are finally happy to see Muslim countries come to the forefront and take up the battle.
That's right.
Against this insane group.
Yeah. And this is not the first time that we've had this in our religion. And again, I am a student of knowledge, and I teach world religions, and so I have a good idea about what has happened in other religions. So this is not the first time that this has happened. In our religion, we speak about Muslims not killing Muslims, but we know that even after the Prophet died, there's some things that happened. When the Prophet was alive, there was someone who said that he was the Prophet. So we had individuals who claimed jump. They claimed jump and said that there was something that there was not, even when the Prophet was alive. Right. So we're going to have that afterwards. But the first group that actually deviated or seceded from Islam is the group that is called the Khawarij.
Khawarij, yeah.
Some people call them the Kharijites. These people, they said any Muslim who commits any sin is lawful for you to spill their blood. So they were wrong.
Yes.
But if you look at them, their beards were longer than anybody else's. They had prostration marks big as camel hoofs. They prayed a lot. They fasted a lot. They gave in charity a lot. But they were deviants. They were not practicing Islam, because Islam is the middle road. Not too far to the right, and not too far to the left.
Exactly.
You agree with me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, again, the religion says, God says, if he was to punish human beings for the wrong they did on earth, no one will remain on earth. So to want to kill somebody because they committed a sin, you should stick yourself first.
Yeah,
That's right. That's so true.
that's what Jesus told his people. He
Yeah,
said,
right.
"He without sin cast the first
Cast the
stone."
first
stone.
Right.
Right.
That's
That's
right.
right.
That's a good point. That's a
Yeah.
good point. Now, I'd like for us to kind of change the gears a little bit.
Okay.
You know, one of the big critiques or people who are critical of Muslims, especially who they call those of us who are moderate, that our voices are not being heard,
Yes.
that they don't see us or hear us or read about us condemning this extremist kind of behavior that's happening by so-called Muslims. And, you know, one of the things that we have to, if we're honest and we admit that oftentimes we have really come out publicly and said things and written things and so forth, but they haven't always been published or broadcast.
Yes.
And one case in particular that I hope the whole world could hear, and especially the major news networks in this country. I'm not shifting the blame, but I think there is some responsibility to bear that when you have positive thinking, progressive-minded, influential people saying things that have great value, the public needs to know. Case in point, Imam Wahdi Muhammad, may God bless him and rest his soul and grant him paradise, was the son of Elijah Muhammad, who was the former leader of the Nation of Islam. His son, Wahdi Muhammad, succeeded his father and turned the Nation of Islam around and introduced it and taught the true teachings of Islam. And in his work, he was very much involved in interfaith work, and he was much involved in embracing people of all faiths. He was really following the tradition of our prophet. And I just want to say, as I finish this statement, that when we look at the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, there are many letters and covenants that he made with the Christian world. That these are letters that he actually wrote and dictated that was sent to major Christian centers around the world, in Syria, in Rome, and many other places. These letters still exist, where he gave instructions to the Muslims on how to treat Christians. That if a non-Muslim Christian woman marry a Muslim, that he has a responsibility to make sure that she can attend her church service. I mean, this is in the letter. So he is give those the kind of instructions. He's not to force her to convert.
That's right.
That if a church is torn down or burned down, it's responsibility for the Muslims to help build it back up. You can go on Google and Google the covenants that Muhammad made with the Christians and verify this for yourself. These are letters that exist. And obviously, there are many Muslims in the world who haven't read these letters. These are authentic letters with his stamp on it. So the point I'm making is that America had a leader, Imam Wahdi Muhammad, who was following in that spirit and that tradition of Prophet Muhammad to embrace people, to bring human beings together. He was a man who loved humanity. So much so that Pope John Paul, which was the fourth?
Yes.
Pope John Paul invited him invited him to the Vatican to speak in St. Peter's Square, where he spoke to over 150,000 people.
Yes.
And Imam Muhammad spoke to these people as a guest of the Pope.
The witnesses we move out of Europe, from North America, Imam Wahid Muhammad of the American Muslim Mission.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. With Allah's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. Vatican and its religious gathering, we dearly regard this invitation. Servants of God from the heavenly faith communities of the world, we are joining one another here at the Vatican in Rome with His Holiness John Paul II, because Muslims, Christians, and Jews and others share basic values and a belief in a virtuous life that wants justice and peace for all. Growth in population, modern transportation, and modern media make for circumstances that put us in one global picture. Television will occasionally put the great religious societies in the living room of its viewers. We cannot but look for opportunities for religions to meet and by sincere discussion come to a better knowledge of each other. We thank Allah for this occasion, for leaders from the great religions to meet here in this holy city of the Catholics, hosted by His Holiness John Paul II, their leader, who has our delegation among his Muslim well-wishers and fervent admirers. I have devoted my life to building bridges. Inclusion was in my heart. I wanted that I believe I wanted that, and I think my father conditioned me to want that. That is, not to be separated, but to be with all good people. I wholeheartedly accept and embrace with you the idea of unity, mutual sharing, and love for one another. We have to condition ourselves to be at peace. God has given us the requirements that we have to meet for a life of faith in Him. And when we meet these conditions, we do have peace. There are many convincing signs everywhere. Those with open eyes, belief, and faith will see them and hear them, will hear the sounds everywhere that goodness is on the rise. We're living in a time of revival of the true life that God put into the human souls when He created the first person. A new world of faith community all over the world is on the rise. God is one. His creation is one whole. There is one universal law for all matter, for all material things, and everything is related. God has made things different, human beings too, because God wants unity to progress. The diversity is to provide the unity with legs, with wheels, with movement for more progress. God said He had made us humanly different by color, by nationality, to encourage us to walk together and get acquainted with each other, to have peace and unity. We thank His Holiness John Paul II for making this opportunity possible. As the Imam and representative for a large number of Muslim Americans, we greet this multi-religious gathering with peace, salamu alaikum, with peace and with brotherly love. We ask that divine favor be upon all the participants and on this holy place. Ameen. Peace.
Ringraziamo.
And not one major news network in this country covered that story.
Ain't that something? That's a shame.
That's really a shame.
Yeah.
Here you have an American born, an African American man who's a Muslim who speaks to the Roman, to the Vatican in an audience with the Pope of Rome, and not one major or minor news network or newspaper covered it. So this is the thing that we're saying, is that we have to, and I know some of it is our responsibility to create a relationship with the media, but on the other hand, it's also the media's responsibility to not just to give the public one viewpoint or one picture, and then play that picture over and over and over again until it's ingrained in the public mind that Muslims can be or the same as ISIS. You know, and that's the mindset. So what we like to do right now is to share with you an interview, and we're not going to read the thing verbatim, but these some of the questions that were given when Imam Muhammad, back in February 2002, he was interviewed by Tony Brown, who was an African-American journalist of the Tony Brown Journal back in 2002. And this was right on the heels of September 11, 2001. And one of the questions that Tony Brown gave him was, he says, right now, as a result of this tragic event, speaking of 9/11, this attack on our country, I understand that many of the best-selling books are on Islam. Americans and people around the world are trying to understand it. Students are demanding it. So we do see a great interest in Islam, regardless of you know, we know what's spawned is what's been seen in the media, but based on what you all have observed, have you all noticed that because of this negative stuff, that there are people who are sincere and serious students are beginning to really study Islam?
I think just to make a quick reference, I think what it is that the human soul knows that God would not sanction what's going on,
Right.
and that soul is seeking knowledge that will help it satisfy its own thought, and that is, this can't be God's way.
Right.
So that's making people more curious,
right.
to want to know what exactly is Islam. What is this religion
Right.
of Islam? You know, I know Muhammad Ali's of the world.
Yeah.
You know, I know
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
right.
Yeah.
So I just can't. I know
Right.
Oliver. I know Salahuddin. I know Susie, who's a Muslim. They don't perform like this. So something's not right about this.
Right.
Let me find out in an independent way. And I think and then people, when they come, the light get turned on.
Right.
And they say, oh, this isn't that bad as I thought it was. So I might even convert.
There you go.
And
that happens sometimes.
And that happens.
I know
That's right.
one of the
That's right.
brothers who was assisting me in New York, his son had become a Muslim, and so he picked up the Quran because he wanted to try to find something in it and find a way to get his son out of it. And he read the Quran, and he became a Muslim. He took a shot and became a Muslim. I know many stories like that.
Right.
I'm I have students, and we're talking about world religions, and I have one Muslim in the class, and he's an African Muslim, and he was saying to me, he wrote me an email, and he was saying that he's glad that he's in the class because now he sees how he really should treat other religions, whereas before he didn't have that attitude.
Right.
But because he's in the class, he's able to see it, and we didn't even get to Islam yet. We're just talking about other religions.
Other religions,
But
right.
the way that I'm bringing it to
Right.
him, he's able to do that. So that's just one sign.
Right.
Yes, we do carry something with us.
Right.
The only thing people know about Islam is what they see us do.
Right.
So we have to really be good models of it.
Right.
Right? We know that we have enemies of Islam out there. We do. We see it on TV every day.
Right.
And so I saw one of our imams get on one of the shows, and he was pretty much destroyed because it was a sound bite, and he really couldn't get into anything.
Right. Right.
So we need to be out there.
Right.
We need to be out there so that we can show you what our imam has taught us and what we live daily. What we live daily in terms of living our religion and practicing our religion. And what you see going on out there, overseas, is not the religion.
Right.
And what you see here in America, you see the enemies of Islam trying to give it a black eye. So we are doing this
Right.
because we want to get the word out to let you know that that's not Islam, and they need to look at what we're doing. And what Imam Oliver was saying about our leader, Imam Waridin Muhammad, may Allah forgive his sins and grant him paradise, he dealt with a lot of this stuff years ago.
Pre-9/11.
Pre-9/11,
That's right,
and then when
right.
9/11 came, he dealt with that situation.
Right.
He talked
Right.
about terrorism,
Right.
and he talked about what Islam is and what Islam doesn't accept. And I remember where Tony Brown was asking about suicide.
Right.
And Imam said, suicide is a great sin in Islam, great sin,
Right.
as it is in Catholicism and most of Christianity.
Right.
It is one of the major sins. So we don't believe in that, but yet we see people doing it.
Right.
And somebody telling them that they're going to get all this stuff in paradise if they do it. They have a misinterpretation of what true Islam is, and that's a fact.
That's a fact.
You know, one of the things too that, and we all can attest to this, that a great deal of the Islamic world is not literate when it comes to their own religion.
That's a fact.
Right.
So you take illiterate people and you put some soothsaying, smooth talking, seemingly logical person in front of them, telling them what the religion is, they don't know what it is.
Yes.
So they're following someone else's thinking of the religion, and it's very clear that we should be following the Quran and the life of Muhammad the Prophet.
Exactly.
One of the things too that we have been blessed, as my colleagues have mentioned about our leader, Imam W.D. Muhammad. One of the treasures that we found with Imam Muhammad was his very sober, sensitive, deep penetration in understanding our religion. And one of the things that was very basic and fundamental for us is like brushing our teeth. And that was building relationships with other people of faith.
Right.
That's fundamental to us. So when 9/11 happened, for us, it wasn't a big problem for us in terms of people wondering, are they like that?
Right.
They knew us already.
Right.
Right.
But because we had built relationships with
right.
them.
That's
In
right.
fact, one pastor called us when 9/11 happened, and he said, do you want me to bring some of my men over there to stand with you? And we told him, no, we appreciate it,
Right.
Yeah.
but we don't need it.
That's
Right.
right.
Because we have established relationships. And I think that's just our religion. We only live in our religion. And there's some that criticized us, you all
Right.
can
Yeah.
remember.
Oh,
I
yes.
remember.
Yeah.
They called
That's
us,
right.
they said we was watering down the religion.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Now they
watering
put it down
it
because they see the importance of it. That
Right,
we have
exactly.
to establish relationships
Right.
with other
Right,
people.
right,
So
that's
yeah,
right.
we actually began that whole idea about interfaith
Yes,
cooperation.
sure
We
did.
did.
Right,
And
right.
as you mentioned, I mean, we did it way before 9/11.
Right.
So when 9/11 took place, I remember the rabbi in one of the communities, some people put some challah bread and jam at the door and had a little note there saying, we're all cousins.
Beautiful.
And we know that your women, they may want to go shopping and they wear the hijab and they might be a little afraid, so you let us know and we'll go with them. Again, people will come to us
Right.
Right.
because they know we have been working with them for a
Right.
long time, so they know us.
Right.
That's right.
And that's important.
Right. And I'd like to also add, I know in Raleigh, when it happened, the sheriff, who was then John Baker, he was African American sheriff, big tall brother, and he called us. Yeah, he was
Ex-football player.
ex NFL football player.
That's right.
He called us and wanted to know were we okay, and if we need anything, his department was available.
Yes.
And they wanted to, as you said, they wanted to protect the community. You know, and this is why those of us who are Muslims in this country who enjoy freedom, justice, and equality, it's not perfect, but at least we have an opportunity to practice our faith.
That's right.
The First Amendment of the Constitution allows us to assemble, allows us to speak freely as we're speaking right now. We can promote our faith and live it and practice it with freedom. And so when ISIS or these extremist group does things on an international scale, and they begin to influence public opinion in this country, it puts Muslims in this country at risk.
Oh, yeah.
And so we have to fight against it, and we have to condemn it. And we will hope that the American public will know that Muslims in America, we don't stand for that.
No.
If some of us were young enough and strong enough, you're talking about boots on the ground, we'll be willing to put some boots on the ground to stop this extremism that's going on. Let's move on. In this interview with Tony Brown with Imam W. Muhammad, he he said that the Quran is the top of that list, meaning that reading list. Students are demanding in university schools and in multicultural programs that a background or explanation of the philosophy of Islam be given to them. Within Islam, there's a debate over the Osama bin Laden. In this case, it would be who's this guy with ISIS now? ISIS.
Let's call him ISIS
the ISIS. Anyway, and people like him. Among Christians and Jews, people who are not Muslim, they are trying to understand Islam in order to understand the motivation primarily for these terrorists. This will give everybody an opportunity to come to you as someone who is an expert and get a precise explanation. You are the spiritual leader of about 2.5 to 3 million African American Muslims. He said, that's what I'm told. And then he goes on to say, from your point of view, what is happening in terms of Osama bin Laden and his version of Islam? And so we know that's
history.
Al-Qaeda, and he's history. But what can we say about these people who call themselves Muslims and their interpretation of Islam? How are they interpreting it? One of the things I want to say is we can tell that there's a lot of anger in that part of the world, and as was mentioned earlier about the Crusades and colonization, we know that during any wartime, and in order to have an enemy, you have to tell a story about your enemy that will create frustration and fear in the minds of your soldiers so they can have a reason to fight. And so during the Crusades, a lot of propaganda was pushed out on both sides in order to fire up the soldiers. And it seems like, and after, as well as after colonization of those Muslim countries, it seems like the scholarship and the academics that came out of, as a result of that, it seems like the interpretation that they give to Islam, they're filtering their frustration, and they're filtering Islam through their frustration and their anger and their hurt. And so what comes out at the end is in interpretations that lend itself to extremism and anger at the West. So, I mean, how do y'all feel about that point?
Well, I think what you're saying is accurate. It's minds that function out of hurt and desperation,
Right.
and also jealousy.
Right. Okay.
I think that a lot of the Islamic world had this jealousy against the West because we lost our way. We lost our way. We had a lot of influence in the world. We can go through, look at history, see a lot of influence in the world, and we got dethroned because we left. And Muhammad the Prophet said that my people would go to sleep.
That's right.
And they said, what would put them to sleep? He said their love for materialism.
thing, right.
And we can look at it and
Right.
see. So while they were sleeping, the West was awoke, and they were working.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a jealousy that has developed as well. And we know that the West has done some things
Right.
that has hurt the Islamic world.
Right.
And I think, but the Quran makes it very clear, don't let the hatred of others
people
towards you
swerve from justice.
cause you to swerve from being just.
And then it said, be just, even if it's against yourself.
Self, that's
it.
right.
Right.
So I think they're not being just.
Right.
So you can see how they are not applying it to themselves. And our Imam mentioned that we have all these different schools of thought, and we do. We have 4 main schools of thought, but we have some others as well. But even within them, in terms of the interpretation of certain verses in the Quran or interpretation of certain actions in terms of the life of the Prophet has been misinterpreted. And so in terms of misinterpreted or distorted,
Right.
this is deliberate.
Right.
Right.
The deliberate distortion so that people think that this is what it means.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that.
Right.
I mean, and we have plenty of examples of that. And so it's important for us to go to the people who know.
Right.
So go to the people who know.
Right.
If you want to know something.
Exactly.
Don't go to somebody else that's doing guesswork. Go to the people who know. The world, our world, missed out on a great opportunity when we had Imam Muhammad with us today.
Yeah.
He's not presently with us today physically, but his body of knowledge is still with us.
Right.
So you have an opportunity to come to us
Right.
and get the right answer about what Islam truly is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'd just like to say, I like your point when you say come to those who know. You know, oftentimes we hear on news stations, on these talk shows and these broadcasts where people begin to quote verses from the Quran. You know, see, that's in the Quran. Kill them wherever you find them. you know, hit them at their necks. You know, and you know, to me, that would be like a Muslim quoting Bible.
Right.
And we can go to the Old Testament
Yes.
and the New Testament
That's right.
and find some very
Absolutely.
violent verses.
Absolutely.
And I, as a Muslim, I will because I respect my Christian friends and family, I will not abuse
That's right.
their book because I'm not a Bible scholar.
Right.
I'm not a Bible theologian.
Right.
So I will not misquote their book or say something out of context because I know with any text, in the scripture, you have to do textual analysis.
That's it.
And with every text, there's a context.
Right.
And so so when you quote scriptural text, you have to know the context. So if you find any verses in the Quran that deals with fighting a war, look at the context. And you will find that in every case, it was defensive.
That's right.
It was defensive. And that brings us to the next point where
Before you go there, I got to say something. on this.
Please.
Because that's so, when you put that verse out there, that's like one of the verses that they always come out with. You know, always come out with it. And you mentioned it, contextual reality is important.
Right.
When you go into it, you find out that that was really restricted to something that happened.
Right.
So it's not for everything. You don't just go in the book. You need to really have people who know how to go into the book.
Exactly.
Someone said once that the Quran is a book of war. That's what he said, a book of war. And this was a student, and he was in the military.
Wow.
And this is what they told him. He was my neighbor. And I told him, no, brother, it's not, because they was talking about all of the verses in the Quran that speak about war. So I was talking to one of my friends, associates, who was a colleague of mine, who happens to be a reverend, okay? And so he told me, he said, man, he said, they're talking about over so many verses in the Quran. And he said, but there's like three times that in the Bible.
Yes,
that speak about war.
Exactly.
But you know, when I told the brother and he went back to his professor, the professor began to try to explain that. I said, why didn't they give us that opportunity?
Right.
They didn't give us that opportunity.
Exactly.
They just said that's what it means.
Right.
But no, it's a lot.
Right.
We was with a program in Connecticut at Harvard Seminary called Building Abrahamic Partnerships. So they had Christians, Jews, and Muslims come together, and we came together. We visited a church, we visited a mosque, we visited a synagogue. We dealt with certain things, and we dealt with some troubling verses.
Good.
Troubling verses
Exactly.
in each book.
Each text, right.
And each of the people was able to present it so people understood what it meant.
Right.
That's what you do.
Exactly.
You don't just say, oh, it says that in the Quran. Well, man, have you read your Bible?
That's right.
Think of it.
Because if you read your Bible, there's a lot of things there too.
That's
but
right.
we're not condemning that. We're
No.
saying, no, it's
Right.
a way to understand
Stand
it.
it.
What does it mean?
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
And you know, the Quran is defense.
Yes.
It's defense. It doesn't put us on the offense.
Right.
Defense. And you know, I remember Imam Muhammad said once, if you take a little rat and you corner it
Right.
for its survival, it will defend itself.
That's right.
So we have to defend ourselves the only time. And like the Quran says, when an enemy inclined towards peace, you incline towards peace too.
Right.
So you don't keep going at them. But you have, and listen, God has given us a human anatomy that speaks to the whole life of human beings. Inside this anatomy, we have white blood cells. They are called the fighters.
The fighters.
This Ebola.
Right. Okay.
Ebola right now, right? If the white blood cells are strong in the body, Ebola won't have a chance because the fighters are there. So Ebola comes as an enemy. In the white blood cell, okay, we got an invader, let's fight back so we can protect this body.
Right.
That's what we do in Al-Islam.
Wonderful.
Great.
That's awesome, man. One of the questions that Tony Brown raised to the Imam was, he asked the question, what about aggression? What about aggression? And the Imam says, aggression is forbidden in Islam. God expressly says in our holy book, be not aggressors.
Sure.
Even in cases of war, it says that if the other side, as you just said, shows a willingness to have peace or willingness to stop the war, you incline toward them also in like fashion. So this shows us, you know, he's just commenting on what some verses that we just read.
Yeah.
So that's important that we understand
You know,
that.
that go for the house too, you know.
Huh?
That
To go for the house too.
You know?
Yeah, that's
You
right.
and the wife got a beef.
That's right.
She inclined towards peace.
Peace,
You don't keep
incline.
arguing. You
That's
shut
right.
up, man.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
That is so true. That's so true.
Alhamdulillah.
That's so true. Another point I think that should be made is that when we look at the global religions, at the religions of the world, sometimes we do focus, as you mentioned, on the particulars. And some things are particular for that certain space and time.
Right.
And sometimes, and in the doctrines of religions, the particulars is for that faith community
Yes.
to imbibe them, to really strengthen themselves with. But also in all the religions, they have a general worldview or a global vision. They have a particular vision for themselves, but they also have a global vision.
Right.
And that global vision is more inclusive.
Yes.
And we look at Islam in the same way, and we should look at all religions that same way. And I think what has been missing in a lot of interpretations of Islam is Islam's global vision. We're focused on the quote unquote, the so-called Islamic State,
Yeah.
which is particular and specific for Muslim living in life to practice their faith. But we also have to focus on Islam's global vision. Islam has a global vision for humanity, and it's a very inclusive vision. And we saw how our prophet left the foundation, as you mentioned, in Medina. He laid the groundwork for Muslims to live in the globe.
Yes.
Because some of the challenges that Muslims faced was when they left the Arabian Peninsula and began to spread, we saw that that's when some of the difficulty happened. People were so inclusive that they didn't know how to become exclusive. I'm sorry. They were so exclusive
Right.
that they didn't know how to become inclusive
Inclusive, that's
and
right.
embrace people.
That's right.
But when we look at the higher values that Islam have, and the scholars in Islam call this maqasid al-sharia, which is the higher values and principles. And Islam starts with three major objectives. One is to establish the oneness of God, the worship of God. The second one is the purification of the human soul. The third one is to build a human community that's
Yes.
based on faith, that's
Yes.
based on human growth and development.
Yes.
And then so with those goals, it has objectives. And one of the first objectives is to preserve the soul,
Yes.
to preserve the human soul. So anything that is in the environment that presents difficulty and presents danger for the soul, we have to fight against that
Yes.
and defend the human soul against it. The second thing that Islam wants to preserve is the human mind. So anything like alcohol or drugs or violence on TV, foolishness, anything that promotes ignorance, Islam is against that.
That's right.
Then the third thing is Islam wants to preserve the deen or the religion, to preserve faith.
Yes.
So Islam works to promote that. It wants to preserve property, and it wants to preserve the offspring. And in our association, some of the higher values that we can add to that is freedom, justice, and equality.
Yes.
These are values
Yes.
that Islam
Right.
promotes, and this is what we are about, is promoting those higher values. So anything that works against these values, these higher principles, we are against that.
That's right.
And I think all religions have this.
Yes.
And I think if you look at them, if you put them on a scale or to view, they would be saying the same thing.
That's right. Right. And that's the beauty of our religion. being inclusive is that we recognize, respect, and value all people of faith.
Right.
All people of faith. And again, from the Quran, God says those who are going to be Christians, let them be Christians.
Right.
Those who are going to be Muslims, let them be Muslims. Just be good people.
Yeah.
Be good human beings. And actually, in our religion, we are obligated to defend the right of Christians to be Christians.
Christians, right.
Because God says that if their houses of worship are attacked, we have to defend them.
Right.
Now, if we got to defend the brick and mortar, logically, going right to the conclusion, should not supposed to defend his flesh, and his right to be a Christian.
Exactly.
That's our religion.
Exactly.
And everybody don't have to be
Right.
a Muslim. And I think that's another thing
Right.
that I think frightens people about
Right.
Islam,
Right.
or what's viewed as Islam, is they think we want everybody to be a Muslim or else.
Right.
Now, my heart, I would love everybody to be a Muslim.
Right.
Just like a good Christian
Right.
would love everybody to love to be a Christian.
Right.
However, that's not the reality.
Exactly.
Right.
And you can't impose that on other people.
Right. Exactly right. And you know, there's a reference in the Quran that says there's a reference in the Quran where God says that if He had wanted all of us to be one, He would have made us that way.
Yes.
He would have made everybody the exact same.
Right.
He would have
That's
made
right.
everybody the exact same.
That's right.
So He said if He had wanted that way, He would have made it that way.
That's right.
So obviously, until the day of judgment, there's going to be difference.
Difference.
There's going to human beings are going to differ,
That's right.
and there's going to be many other religions
Yes.
until the day of judgment, and God's going to judge us all.
Yes. You know, the verse in the Quran, and we just coming out of the Hajj season. That's when Muslims, pilgrims go to Mecca, the sacred house. And, you know, as we all know, we've been there. The most important day is the 9th day. It's called Arafat. And that's a mountain that you go to. But it also, the word Arafat means to come to know each other. And God said that He created us as one human being. Then He made us nations and tribes for the express purpose so that we come to know each other.
That's it.
Right.
So that's what the life is for us as Muslims. We want to come to know each other
Right.
because we know God didn't give it all to us.
Right.
And the other beautiful thing for us again is we know our prophet Muhammad, praise and peace be upon him. God took him up on a night journey, and he saw the different prophets on different levels. So we recognize the oneness of religion, unlike many others don't.
Right.
But we have to believe in the Bible. We have to believe in the Torah. God tells us clearly
Right.
that the Quran is a confirmation, a clearer explanation, and a completion
Right.
of revelation that came before. So we connected. We know we connected.
That's right.
We are brothers.
Yeah.
Christians, Muslims, Jews, we're brothers.
And so we got to keep offering this to folks. And as you mentioned, it's very important to realize that we're all in this together, and that if people be true to what they say they believe in, we all get along.
Right.
That's right.
That's
And
true.
if people come together with us in interfaith cooperation, then that means that we will be eliminating Islamophobes.
Right.
Right.
We'll
Exactly.
be destroying that idea of Islamophobes. And what we'll have is individuals that are not Muslims
Right.
but saying no. Like,
That's
you know,
right.
I remember my mother told me before she passed, she said that she was in a Bible study class, and the person who was teaching the class was saying all this ugly stuff about Islam. And so she said she didn't go back no more because she knew what he was saying was wrong.
Right. She got a son.
She got a son. She know what Islam is. You know, he didn't know what he was talking about. So more of those people need to come in together like the ones we're talking about, and then they'll begin to see exactly what the religion is about,
Right.
and know that no, we are a religion of peace.
Exactly.
Even though sometimes you may find people who have a misunderstanding or a distorted idea, do something out,
Right.
strange.
But you know, we got our sick people.
Yeah,
We all got our sick people.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize this, but Hitler said he was a Christian.
he sure did.
And look what he did.
Yeah.
Sure did.
Yeah.
A lot of people know this, especially here in the South.
Yeah.
The people who wore sheets They said they were Christians.
Yeah.
Right.
The KKK. They said,
Right.
and look what they did
Yeah.
Right.
to people. But we didn't. You can't. We're not judging the whole Christianity
Yeah.
on the ugly, inhumane behavior of them.
Right.
And all we asking for is justice.
Somebody put it on the internet and
Right.
on Facebook. They showed all these Ku Klux Klan, and then under it they showed the ISIS people, and they said we do not judge the religion by these people. So why are you judging Islam by these
Exactly.
people? I mean that was a picture,
Right.
plain to see, man.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
that's
So
right.
ain't that
And
something?
there was a study done. I forgot the gentleman's name, but he did a study called "The Body Count," and it was his chronology of all the wars that have taken place on the earth, and the number of people who have been killed, and by who. And and because I wanted to know, because you heard all this talk about Islam being a violent religion, but when you look at this man's scientific study, he studied all the wars, and and based on his statistical data, that he said it wasn't Islam who killed the most people, it was Christendom. This is not condemning Christianity.
It's the truth. It's a
But
fact.
all the wars, the body count. If you do a body count, of all the wars, and even when we look at the life of the prophet during his time, all the little skirmishes that he had, from what I understand, only 1,800 people died.
Total.
Total. This is historical proof. In all his wars, only 1,800 people died. It was about 11 different skirmishes. I don't even call them wars. Compared on this scale that we have in modern times with these modern weapons that kills people and that kills and they call it collateral damage. But during the time of the prophet, they were more. It was hand to hand combat.
Right.
Yes.
Most of the time, so you were killing a combatant.
Right. That's right.
And so you don't
Clear
have to,
enemy.
right. So it was clear. So we're not pointing fingers, but we just have to get the record clear. Yes. I think in closing, in this segment, I think it'd be good for us to have a closing discussion. Stories are powerful, and they leave messages in the hearts and minds of men forever. And we were talking before we began about the story of the prophet's experience when he went to Taif. Let's have a brief discussion on that and the lessons that we learned from that story, if you don't mind, brother Imam.
Okay, so that particular story is very important. The prophet, Muhammad the prophet, peace be upon him, he was catching hell, if you will, in Mecca where he lived. And it was just almost unbearable. And so he decided to go into another town called Taif to see if he could gather some support from there. And when he went there, some of the instigators got the children and others to begin to pelt stones at him. And they threw so many stones at him that his body had all kind of marks on it and blood coming from it, from these stones. And they said that you could actually hear the blood gushing in his sandals.
Right.
That's how much it was. And when he got out of that space, he went and he relaxed at a certain place where someone came to give him some support. But the story tells us that the angels came to him and said to him that all you have to do is give us the word, and we will bring the mountains, the 2 mountains, down on these people. And in the height of his pain, etc., the prophet told them, no, no. Perhaps their children will become Muslim. And so they didn't do it. So what do you get from that?
A lot. I'm going to start with mercy. The prophet came, the Quran, every chapter in the Quran. And Muhammad the prophet, let me preface by saying this, Muhammad the prophet was the living Quran, or is the living Quran. It was once asked of his wife, what is his character? She said his character was the Quran in motion. So he lived the Quran. He was the demonstrator of the Quran. In the Quran, every chapter begins with 2 attributes of God. The merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer.
Yes.
Every chapter except 1 chapter, okay? So our religion is a religion of mercy. Muhammad the prophet demonstrated to us in this instance here, and in many others, how he came as a mercy. I'm trying to think of the verse. When
Rahmatul Alameen.
when someone said, actually not the verse, that you're right about that. He came as a mercy to all the world.
Right.
But someone wanted him to destroy someone, and he said, I didn't come for that purpose. I came as a mercy.
Right.
So Muhammad
That's
the
right.
Prophet's life is a mercy. Plus, you also see in this his vision. His vision is that if he was to crush them, then it would have been no possibility for Islam's life to grow in that environment.
Right.
So he was thinking about the future,
That's right.
which is really our life as Muslims. We should
Right.
think about the future. And he also was saying to us, don't be a person that retaliates.
The vengeance. Yeah.
Vengeance.
Vengeance. Right.
You understand?
Right.
He also was saying, they don't know, they're kids.
Right.
Even the adults who are kids in their thinking.
Right.
So you don't destroy them. It's like the person that came in the mosque
And you urinated.
and urinated.
Yeah. Right.
Grown man, urinate.
Right.
Some people wanted to pounce on him. You know, Prophet said, no, just go get some water and
Clean it up.
throw and clean it up.
That's right.
Mercy.
Right.
So, because people don't, the point is this man didn't know what he was doing.
Right.
He just wanted to let it out.
Yeah.
He thought any way he let it out was okay.
Exactly.
The mercy.
Right.
So you got to also consider what people think it is, and that's what the prophet considered.
Yes.
All of that in that one statement to the angels.
Yeah.
Mercy.
Beautiful.
That's what I see. Mercy.
What I like, what I see is, the ayat in the Quran where Allah says, "Fi Rasulullah uswatun hasana," that in the messenger you have the most excellent model for all who have who all believe in God. For those who have faith and who desire the life after.
Yes.
And what I see is the Prophet, through his example with Taif, taught us how we should handle our anger. And anger is a secondary emotion. The primary emotions that become before anger is hurt, fear, and frustration. We can imagine how those stones felt.
Oh yeah.
He was hurt, and we can imagine the frustration he was having, and just the fear that he was having. So hurt, fear, and frustration are the primary emotions that produce anger. So the question is, how are we as Muslims and how are the Muslim world studying the Prophet's life?
Yeah.
This is why that verse is so important. It says, "Fi Rasulullah." It didn't say Allah Rasulullah on him.
Right.
It didn't say his kufi or his thobe or his sandals.
In.
It says in him.
Yeah.
So we see his emotions. How did he manage his emotional life? So when we hear of young children, young boys wanting to go to ISIS and fight because they're angry with America.
Yes.
Now, here's Americans living in this country of freedom, going to a place where there is none. And yet they're frustrated and they're angry with America. But how would the Prophet respond?
You should always think about that.
Always think about what, as they say, what would Muhammad do?
That's right.
And we're showing you what Muhammad did
Right.
when he was attacked.
Right.
We also have an example of this woman throwing garbage on him. And he would go by her house daily and she would throw garbage on him. And when it didn't happen one day, he went up to her place and found out, are you okay?
Yep.
That's touched that woman's heart. So that's what Muhammad did.
That's right.
That's the message that,
So we have a perfect
That,
example in here.
perfect example of how human
And
beings
if
want to
Muhammad
respond.
was here today,
Right.
he would be fighting ISIS.
ISIS.
right.
He would be
He would
fighting
be
ISIS.
fighting
Destroying
ISIS.
ISIS.
That's
That's
right.
he
ISIS would be on ice.
ISIS would be on
right.
ice.
ISIS would be on ice.
And that's a perfect spot for us to finish this segment. And we thank you all for listening. And we encourage you to visit our website, islamic.org, www.islamic.org. And any questions that you may have about this show, you're free to send us a message, or you can also call the phone numbers that will be listed on the screen. And we will also hope that you will be able to watch this show on YouTube and our website, and as well we will have CDs and any other recordings available. Thank you for listening.